Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Tea and a Chat.
With Harry and Pat and Sarah.
Not Pat. This is it. So we have a guest on today. I'm going to have to explain this Pat thing again.
I know we explain it every week, but it's just a part of it now.
So we've got a guest, Katherine.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. So this Pat thing, right? This podcast is Tea and a Chat, is what we call it. Well, that's kind of I feel like, is there a longer title than that? No.
Tea and a Chat with Harry and Pat.
No,
yes.
It's not. Basically, it's the rhyme that Zara goes for, which every single podcast episode we do, I'm like, what if someone's just started listening today and they're like, who's this Pat?
But people know us as Harry and Pat now. It's fine.
That's not your name.
So?
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm committed to the rhyme.
Anyway, so, yeah, moving on. That's the gist of Harry and Pat, whatever that is. Today, as I say, we've got Katherine with us. So, Katherine, I'm just going to ask you to sort of introduce yourself, sort of tell us maybe your background and what kind of stuff you're getting up to these days, just so people can get a feel of who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Katherine Skene, and I have worked in casting for many years, and I'm also the success manager at Spotlight for casting directors and agents. And yeah, I focus a lot on casting. I have worked on some incredible shows and have recently opened, I say recently, it's actually been 3 years, but 2 years ago opened my own casting business called Katherine Skene Casting, and I've got to cast some really cool Scottish projects. So yeah, I'm very delighted to be
Sorry.
That's amazing. I mean, that's obviously, we're definitely going to dive into all of that stuff a bit more. So what kind of, I'm very excited about this. What kind of journey did you kind of go on to end up where you are? Did you kind of come through like a performing route yourself, or tell us about that?
Sure. So, I mean, I think everyone's journey is very different to kind of getting to all different like genres within the sort of performing art world, but mine kind of takes lots of different turns, so I will try and keep it short and sweet, but yeah, it does take a lot of different paths to kind of lead to where I am today. So when I left school, I decided that I wanted to go to university. So I have a business degree, so I went to uni in Aberdeen for 4 years, and then when I finished my degree, I was like, if I never try, I'll never know to try out being a performer. I used to always do sort of dram and youth stuff and doing musical theatre, so I thought, let's give it a go. So at age 22, I packed up my bags, moved to London on my own from
Love
Scotland.
That. Love that.
Yeah, just went for it, and I didn't want to do a full course because I'd already done university for 4 years, so I wanted to do an intensive course. So I joined a school called AMTA, it was called at the time, which I believe is called the International College of Musical Theatre now, but it was called AMTA at the time, and I did a 1 year intensive course there in musical theatre, and I loved it. It was amazing. It was so hard and so stressful, but it was incredible, and I met some amazing people there, and I was taught by some incredible industry professionals. And then when I left there after a year, I decided I wanted to try out performing for a little while, so I worked professionally for a few months, but soon realised that it probably wasn't for me in terms of being on the stage. I loved it, and it kind of took the love away from it for me, which was a bit of a shame, but I just loved business as well, so I was like, there must be a world where I can mix my love for musical theatre and my love for business together, but if I'm honest, I had absolutely no idea how to do that, so I kind of just went and searched for things to do in that field, and came across a company called Celador Worldwide, which is a production company, and they produce a lot of international and national tours. And I basically wrote to them and said I'd love to get some work experience, and their casting director got in contact and said, we're looking for someone to come in to be a runner, and would you come along? And that's kind of how I found out what casting was and what a casting director was, and I completely fell in love with it. So I worked with Celador for a while, and then I thought, I really need to kind of put my eggs in lots of different baskets, because I have experience as a performer now in casting, but I'd love to see a bit of agenting side as well, just so I can kind of get a full breadth of everything.
That's brilliant.
So I went to work for a company which was called War Global at the time. I sound so old when I say at the time. I really am that old.
So everything's changed since COVID, so it's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, it's Intertalent, as you would know it now, the agency, and I work there in their broadcast department. So that really taught me a lot, working with high profile clients in terms of how to kind of manage their career. And I worked then with United Agents after that as well as a temp to try and get lots of different bits of information. But I knew casting was kind of where I wanted to be. So I got in contact with hundreds of casting offices, begging for them to take me. And in 2017, I emailed Pippa Alien's office, and they said, we're looking for someone. And then I worked for them full time until the pandemic as their casting assistant. And I got to work on incredible shows such as Lion King and Come From Away and Wicked and The Book of Mormon, and just some amazing, amazing shows.
Yeah.
And I learned so much working with Pippa and Natalie, and they really taught me what it's like to be a casting director and how to be a kind and yeah, to make a really lovely experience for auditions. So
yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
It's such a great journey as well, and I love that you've just like tried all these, like trying different avenues and getting that experience. I think that's such a great thing, because I don't know if that's always encouraged in education, is it, would you say? I don't know, maybe that's just my opinion thinking back to school. I don't know.
Yeah, I
think
don't
it's kind
know.
of hard. Yeah, it's not really. I mean, when I was at school, I had no idea that you could get an agent. I knew what an agent was, but I didn't know how to become an agent, how to become a casting director, all these sort of different avenues you can go down in the performing arts world. I only knew there was a performer route, and that was it. So I think, it's definitely unknown until you're kind of chucked into it and you can discover it yourself.
Yeah, and I think as well, that's like, obviously agents and casting directors and everything else, it's such a small world, but there's such intricate parts of the world that we all function together, all the cogs want to turn in the same direction. But like you say, I think a lot of people, how do you end up doing this, how do you end up doing that, people don't really know. So I think it's going to be really good for your journey and people to hear that, if that's something they're interested in, or even maybe, oh yeah, I've not really thought about that, but I've actually knocking things around, but got an idea of I think it's just
definitely.
a lovely journey.
I agree.
It's a warm journey. I don't know, that's connotations for me anyway. Wow, so there's lots there that I feel like I just want to ask loads of questions. I'm going to try and stay on topic. So one of the first things we've got written down here is, in regards to casting, would you be able to like break down the casting kind of process and experience from like your side of the table? Because I think obviously coming from a performer's side primarily, I'm like everywhere, I think people talk about stuff and they'll talk about stuff as if they have an understanding, but I think to hear it from someone who's actually experienced it, might bring something fresh to the surface. Do you know what I mean? But what's that like?
Yeah. I'm very happy to delve into that. So it really differs depending on what genre of work you're working in. I think probably film and television casting and is different to musical theatre casting, for example, and commercial casting is a different ballgame completely. But from sort of my experience, which is theatre and musical theatre, it starts with a producer who decides to take on a show, and then they will hire the creative team, which one of them will be the casting director. So we'll go to the casting director and say, hi, we're doing this musical and we'd like you to cast it. So we would then get the script and we would read through the script and we would break it down in terms of what characters we would need to be looking for to cast. The way that I work my process is, once I've got the script, I will always have a call with the director and musical director to kind of get their vision of exactly what they're looking for in terms of from a cast. And whilst I'm kind of organising those meetings, I'm straight on the search to kind of put lists together, people that I have auditioned, in the past, put them down thinking, oh, they'd be great for that. And I keep everyone's CVs, everyone I see, and I always go through them after every process for the next project, because although they may not have got the role before, they may be perfect for this. So I kind of start that process right from the get-go. So once I have that discussion with the creative team and I know exactly what they look for, I usually put a breakdown out on Spotlight and ask for people to be submitted. And then I usually get many submissions back, which is great, and I will go through every single one to make sure that I have seen everybody and try and give people as fair a chance as possible. I think it's always quite difficult depending on the show you're working on and the time constraints that you have as well. Sometimes I've worked on shows that I've had the luxury of 2 weeks of first round auditions, so it's great, I can see loads of people, but then sometimes I'm only given the luxury of 3 days of auditions, and so I only have a small amount of time. So depending on how much time I'm granted, then depends on how many people I can see. But I will always try and squeeze as many people in as I can. So then I'll go through all the submissions, and then I will usually get all the material together, and I will send out to agents, or if you're self-represented, directly to you to invite you into an audition. I try to give as much time as possible with the material, because I know people have lives and other jobs and commitments, so I understand that you're not just waiting at a computer for an audition, you have a life to live, so I try to give as much time as I possibly can with the material, and I'd never expect you to be off book on the first round ever. So then you'll get your audition through, and then that's kind of when the organisational part of the casting journey is a bit crazy on my end, with agents coming back with changes of times and swapping people around, and possibly changing material and those sort of logistics, and then the casting process begins, and the audition process begins, and depending on the show, usually have a couple of days or a couple of weeks of first rounds, and then go into recalls, then into finals, and then between myself, the director, musical director, and the producers, we will make a final decision on who's going to get the role. So that's quite a very brief overview. There's obviously a lot of bits to the puzzle in terms of the show that I've just worked on, Islander. It's going on a UK and US tour, so we had US producers as well to work with, so there's lots and lots of people involved in the picture. But that's kind of the overview.
It's interesting, like we say on here all the time, that like from a performer perspective, we get an audition through, you go to the audition, and your brain is very much like you focused at that point, like and because you want to get the job, and that's how it is. And we always say here, like, you have to think about the people doing the casting have a job to do. They're answering to someone above them who are looking for a specific thing, and it doesn't mean that you're not great, that you could go in and do the best audition ever, but if you're not quite right for every one of those layers, it's then you're just not going to get that job. And it's nothing to do with how great you are, it's just everyone's doing their own bit, and I think it's really good to hear that from a casting director's side. Like, there's so much that go into it, where as a performer you don't think about it, you just get your audition through, you learn the material, you go to your audition, and you know what I mean, that's you don't always think about everyone else who's doing their job in the room as well. It's
a unified effort, isn't it? But I feel like sometimes it can be a bit, I think performers can be a bit self-consumed, which you get nervous and all that stuff, but it's the same, I guess, for you guys as well, and from a casting perspective, because
I think what people have to remember, especially from the casting director perspective, is that we are so on your side. I need you to be good, because these people have entrusted me to bring the right people into the room, and have entrusted that I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about. So when you come in, hi, I'm so on your side. I'm like, yes, come on, you can do this. I know you've got it in you. And I think what people get quite caught up about is when you come into an audition, you may sing a song and you might crack, or you might forget your words, and you're like, oh god, that's it, I'm never going to be seen again. I promise you that is not the case. We will always give you a second chance, or always take that into consideration. That is an extremely nerve-wracking scenario. I'm usually nervous on the first day of auditions as well, so we always give you that time, because we understand completely.
It's one of those things, I guess, as well, like the audition process from all angles. It's like it's never really going to happen. Like once you've you've completed your job and a performer has a job, they're on the stage, and like that is such a different environment to an audition environment. It's so it's like they're so different, and it's such a process you have to go through. And I think for me, it's just popped in the mind that you don't really think about it in that way. It's you focus on, like you say, if you were to crack in a song or something, you like, our brains are just like, what? Yeah, that's happened. Oh God, what, you know?
Yeah.
But I think, like you're saying, there's such a lovely warm feel from you in particular, and I think what you said earlier about, you know, the process that you had with Natalie and Pippa, and that being a lovely experience. Like, that's something, when I met you through doing some running for that, and that resonates with me, because you could really feel that, even though I wasn't part of, like, you know, being in the room, I wasn't auditioning for anything, but you could really feel that it's a unified feeling, and I think that's so good, and I think performers can forget that. And I think it's important to remember that, like you say, we're all on the same team, aren't we?
So you know, if it's in a hostile environment, you're not going to get the best out of people at all. So it makes no sense to, you know, have that sort of, you know, X factor feel to it, because you're just never going to get the best out of the performer, and that's just counterproductive to everybody involved, really.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's good.
I feel like I'm healing my inner performer auditioning a couple of years ago. I'm like, no, they didn't hate me.
It's good to hear. It's good because you do. I think. Yeah, I think people as human beings, we get wrapped up in that. Oh, what did I? Oh, what? Do you know what I mean? We're very good at
100%.
harnessing the negative, which is a lot of what we talk about in these podcasts as well, isn't it? Trying to actually, no, it's all right. We're all human. We all do things in our own way. We all make mistakes. We all do things well, whatever. Moving on a little bit, I guess, would you have any sort of things like advice or stuff that, you know, if seeing multiple people, whether that's on a self-tape or coming into a room, do you have anything that sort of like pops for you that, you know, if someone walks in a certain way, I'm being a bit vague with my question here, but do you know what I mean? Is there something that...
I do, yeah.
Yeah, can you answer that? Do I need to give you a bit more?
Yeah, sure. I think probably the main thing that I would say that you'd actually be very surprised to hear is being prepared is such a big thing. And I know I kind of maybe sound like I'm contradicting myself when I say we don't expect you to be off book. That's not what I mean. I just mean coming into the room and at least have read through it, you know, through the material, and just feeling prepared in the room. There's been many occasions where people have come in and just haven't even, you know, attempted to have a read through, or haven't, you know, have gone away and understood it in a completely different way without asking any questions. Always come back to casting if you don't understand something. Always ask us, because I'd much rather give you as much information as I can to make sure that your audition is the best it can be. But being prepared is just so important. Otherwise, you're wasting everybody's time, and also that's a spot that someone else could have, you know, taken as well. And it can be quite frustrating when people just haven't you know, given any time at all. You know, I completely understand when there's, you know, life going on and lots of things, but definitely communicate with us. Don't ever feel scared. You know, if you need an extension on self-tape, always ask for that. If you need clarification, you know, on something you don't understand, please always ask, because I'd very happily give you the answer to make sure that your audition was the best. So yeah, asking questions and being prepared would be my biggest advice, I'd say.
I love that.
Yeah, it kind of goes back into what we were saying, because it's like the only thing you can control in a casting process is how you do and how well you prepare yourself, how you show up to the room, and to make sure you can put your best foot forward once you're in there. You can't control what the casting director wants or what the producer wants. That's it. So you should do your work into doing that bit, the bit you can control, and focus your energies on that.
I think that's a reflection on people, as, you know, well, you, if you were a performer in that scenario as well, because that's gonna probably, you know, you'll remember that if that name was to pop up again in a casting down the line, you think, well, a bit unprepared, but whatever the case. I guess if you've got a short amount of time, you might think maybe not, but if you had a bit longer, then maybe, I don't know. But I think communication is so important, and it's so accessible these days as well. And that's what we do as performers. We tell stories, and we're all wanting to communicate something, a story or some form at the end of this journey, collaboratively, casting directors and, you know, producers, everyone. So start from the off, I guess, with communication. I think that makes so much sense, and I feel like people don't really think like that. I think people sometimes feel like I can't ask, I can't do this, I've just received this and I've just got to do it.
I was definitely like that. I was definitely like oh no, you've got to just work it out yourself and do it yourself. But
I think that's ingrained a little bit. I don't know why that seems to be a narrative around there, that you can't ask any questions, or of course you can. You want to make sure that you understand it, and can give your best performance, and never ever be scared to ask for that. And the same with asking to change to a morning edition or an afternoon one because you have to go to work or you have childcare, or always ask those questions, because I think it's important to be able to be as flexible as I can. Obviously, there's times where if I only have morning slots, I really can't do anything there. But I will always try and help. So never be afraid to ask that, because that will 100% never go against you. So I think that's a narrative we need to squash.
I completely agree.
I think just chatting about this, it's interesting because I come from a definitely not an MT, definitely would never sing in my life, just a dancer place, and I think you're pushed into like cattle call editions where there's 500 people and it's so busy, and you're sort of told you're just another number, and if you are going to be difficult, or if you're going to ask to change your slot or do something like that, it's like, well, there's another 499 people to choose, so you can't like waste your time. But in theory, and when I say that, it's sort of like, well, the casting team and the producer and everyone are up here, and all the dancers and the actors and everyone else auditioning are down here. But in theory, it's like you are a team working together, and you're all like, you guys need us as much as possible, So it's both ways. Is what I'm saying.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't play that on the speaker you requested.
Oh, who's this?
Is that...
Who's joining in? Oh, is that? That's.
I want to say that in case mine goes off as well.
I actually thought that was you, Catherine, for a minute. I was like, you sound really different. That's Siri getting involved. Well, that's on this Mac. Anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's going to be a funny experience halfway through this.
You weren't invited.
No, well, we'll have to do a separate pod episode for...
Don't say their name.
No, I won't. Anyway, yeah, communicative, teamwork. Love it. Where were we? Oh, I quite like this one. So it's still within like the casting bracket. Is there anything that, maybe you see repeated, or whether that's material or habits or something that, maybe I'm going to probably word this vaguely as well, but what we've got written down here, is there anything that you'd like more of or less of in people who come and show you what they can do? I suppose it's probably topical, isn't it, depending on what you're casting for, but I guess is there things that you're like, oh, why are people doing this thing again and again and again at the moment? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I think it depends on what you are auditioning for, really. But I would definitely say, I think there's this sort of, around musical theatre anyway, if you come in for a first audition and you get to sing a song of your own choice, there's a bit of a narrative that it's, there's a perfect song out there that you must find to perform with, and that's just not true. Like, pick a song that you feel really comfortable with, as long as it's not completely off the genre. You're not auditioning for Dear Evan Hansen with a Phantom of the Opera song. That would be, very off brand. But, I think you just have to do something that makes you feel really comfortable and really confident in. And I would just say, come in and be yourself. Just, really relax. I got some advice when I was performing saying, having an audition is just like getting a chance to sing on a Tuesday and have fun with it. Just feel, like it's a chance just to show off. And I think that's a really good way to look at it. And always just to be kind to everybody around you. Obviously you have the panel in front of you who you're kind of there for, but there's so many other people involved in the process. Like a pianist, for example, who really couldn't do the audition without, the runner, who's spent all day there, checking you in, just, being kind to everybody around, because the process takes so many different people and it just wouldn't happen without all of those parts. So I think it's, we've spoken about the teamwork and the collaborativeness of it, and just kind of thinking that you are going into a space to be really, collaborative and you're part of a team, and there's no levels, and I think that's a good mindset to come in with, and never think that it's, you make a mistake, that's the end, because it's just not true.
I'm
I
loving
love
this
that, yeah.
podcast.
I needed this 2 years ago.
No, but it's one of those things. As you say, it's like it makes so much sense and it resonates so much. And I think sometimes you need to hear these things. Like, you know, obviously we're talking about it now, and people will be listening to this down the line. And I just think it's really just good for the soul, isn't it, to hear that? Actually, oh yeah, of course it's going to be like that. Of course, you know, it's common sense, but common sense goes out the window in auditions, doesn't it? Along with many other things, but you know. Anyway, moving on. Do you want to do this bit? I feel like you should do this bit.
This bit's about Scotland, so yes, I will.
So I'll let you two chat.
So, yeah. It's exciting to me. So where about in Scotland are you from?
Well, I'm actually from Fife.
From Fife.
But I'm based in Glasgow, so yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm from Edinburgh, so not far, but
Not far.
I don't know. I think it's really exciting that you've moved up there now and you're working up there, because I think. I mean, I trained in Scotland and then moved down to London once I graduated, but there was such a emphasis on the industry down south and the industry down there, and if you were really serious, you had to move down there and whatever else. But there's so much talent all over the world, and there's so many opportunities all over. Even for us now that we've moved to the northeast, and there's so many jobs and opportunities here that we were just completely unaware of, because we were down in the London scene, which obviously is such a hub for everything. It's amazing for certain things, but I just think it's refreshing to see someone, you know, working in the industry, but not being London is the only way. So yeah, what do you think about the London / Scotland / rest of the world side of things?
It's definitely, you know, I think that's drilled into you that London is the hub, and London is a huge hub. You know, I have a lot of experience from down there, and a lot of the stuff that I've taken, you know, into my own casting business is learned from my time, you know, working in London. However, Scotland in particular, and I'm sure there is lots of different regions across the UK and Ireland as well, you know, that had their hub, but Scotland has an incredible amount of work there. And what I find really interesting, coming from working in London in casting, then working in casting in Scotland, you know, how they differ, is how supportive the Scottish industry is, and actually how, you know, the casting directors speak directly to performers and agents, and it's just this really lovely sort of group of, you know, industry professionals who are all working together. We recently did a Scottish showcase through Spotlight, so it was all new Scottish grads from 2023 who were coming back to Scotland to basically introduce themselves to the Scottish industry, so we sponsored that, and we had drinks afterwards, and what I used to have when I used to go to showcases in London is that you'd go to the showcase, then agents and casting directors would run off straight after and not speak to anyone. My goodness, I could not get the agents or casting directors or performers out that bar. They were just all together, and it was just so lovely to see everyone mixing, and I think that is something that's really unique to the Scots industry, and I'm sure probably in the same in lots of different regions. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work there, and you don't need to move down south to have a really successful career. You know, I think COVID has many awful things came from COVID, but many good things also did too. You know, the move to self-tape has been a game changer for those who don't wish to live in London. You know, being able to do at least your first round audition on tape, and how much more accepted that is huge, and it's so much more accessible for people wanting to be able to live, you know, where they want to live.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, obviously I'm a bit biased, but
no, rightly so. I think it's so good to hear again, because we're kind of advocates of, you know, it's obviously London is amazing. It's like you say, it's a big hub, probably one of the main hubs, you know, within the UK. But it's not the be all and end all. And I think sometimes it can be made to feel a bit like that.
Definitely, I think especially when you're training, it's sort of put on a pedestal that that's where everyone goes, and that's where all the auditions are, and that's where. But I mean, even if you do, I did end up moving to London in the end, because that's what was going to be best for me. But I also lived at home for a while and travelled down to London when there was auditions I needed to go to. Don't get me wrong, it's not the nicest thing to do a night bus journey, but like it was definitely manageable. And I think if I had been a bit more aware of how many more opportunities there were in Scotland, because I wasn't even looking, to be honest with you. I was sort of like, well, these companies audition in London and that's where I need to be and that's where everyone else is going, so off I go. Whereas if I had been a bit more aware, I could have maybe taken advantage of more opportunities there and been able to balance that a bit better, you know.
So maybe it's a good thing to sort of say, to make people aware, or at least think about that. Have a look around locally rather than, as well as looking into stuff that's going on down in London, because there's always going to be something. There's going to probably be something going on locally as well, whatever that may be, whether it's regional or whatever.
But then that's the same as here if you think about it, because we moved here thinking, oh, we're not going to be performing, we're going to be teaching and whatever else, but then so many performing opportunities have just shown up, and it's like, well, it's crazy to me. Anyway,
it's good though. It's good to. It's so lovely to hear that from your perspective as well, Catherine, and especially you guys are very much Scotland as well, and I'm a big advocate of Scotland now.
You're a McBride, so you're Scottish somewhere.
Yeah, there's something in there somewhere. Ginger beer doesn't come from nowhere. But yeah, would you say with the Scottish industry, is it on a journey at the moment, or is it? Yeah, what would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's on the up for sure. I mean, the amount of filming opportunities up here is just growing. I think we have great film studios here. We have Outlanders filmed here, which is a huge hub, and it brings a lot of tourism as well, which I think also boosts the sort of creative economy here. But yeah, it's definitely on the up, and the amount of talent that's here is unbelievable. I have done a few casting processes here looking for Scottish-based people or Scottish people, and my goodness, it just makes me feel really proud, because I'm like, wow, look at the talent that is here. It's just incredible, and I really want to push and to help the industry as a whole, that if you're filming something in Scotland or any of those regions, you should try and use local talent. I think that's something that that really needs to be pushed a little bit more. And it doesn't come from the casting directors, it comes from the producers and the people who have the money who are putting on those productions. Theatre's not so bad, but definitely film and television, that push to get more local faces on those screens is something that I really want to advocate for, is to try and fight for, which I'm sure all of us do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you think about it as well, Scotland has so many good training institutions, whether that be the Conservatoire in Glasgow, MJ is where I went in Edinburgh, but there's so many more places that every year turning out so much talent that to push them down to London's a shame. Stay in Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more than just the Fringe. I think that's.
But the Fringe itself. But the Fringe is a great example of the hub of creativity and performers. How that can exist in there. That's what I mean.
Just that and the extension of that.
Yeah.
Because I think, well, we're going to have to move to Scotland now. You do realise
sorry, that's fine.
I'm definitely down for that.
I was about to hang up. Sorry.
Sorry. No, that's fine. We're not hanging up yet. We've got more things to talk about. I'm excited. I'm not going to be able to sleep now. So we're going to move on a little bit. We kind of wanted to ask a few questions. I guess it's more about people who might be interested in getting into sort of the agent or casting perspective, because I think we've definitely, know people who have been like, oh yeah, you know what, this is an avenue I want to go down. And again, kind of like you said earlier, it's not necessarily an avenue
where
that's
do you start?
Well, how do I go on this journey? So your journey specifically, would you recommend that way of doing it? It sounds like a really efficient way of doing things, or would you say actually maybe you could do this differently, or do you know what I mean? How would you recommend getting into that sort of?
I think it's a great idea to try lots of different things to see what you want to do. Being a casting director and being an agent is extremely difficult in terms of the sort of role in itself, especially being an agent, because there's so many legal and contractual things that are involved with that. So I would definitely, advise, trying out these things. If you do want to go down a casting director route or an agent route, try and get some experiences in offices. I know the PMA, which is the Personal Managers Association, and they're the sort of organisation for agents. They have like a vacancy board with loads of sort of like intern stuff, assistant agent stuff on there. So if you wanted any experience, I would definitely recommend going on there and having a little look. It's the same for the CDG, which is the Casting Directors Guild website. They have a vacancy page too, if you're looking for some experience. But I would absolutely urge you to email casting offices and agent offices if you want any of that experience, whether it's just a week's worth of work experience or something. At least you can kind of get a bit of a taste and a foot in the door. And I'd also say, trying to go to as many things as possible. I know we're in a cost of living crisis at the moment, so that's a little bit difficult. But I know, especially in Scotland, there's loads and loads of things that are free to go and see. There's lots of things that sort of like pay what you can schemes, which are really great, because then you network and you meet people and, look at the back of the programme, look who's produced it, look who's cast it, and just kind of, get those, all those pieces of information and kind of put them away so you can kind of collect that. That would be my biggest advice if you want to get into it, is to try and get some real lived experience in it, especially as an agent, because that is extremely difficult, but also you are in charge of people's careers. So ensuring that you know how to deal with difficult contracts and special stipulations and, those sort of tricky things that producers love to throw in, making sure that you've had experience is really key to make sure you're protecting your clients.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's actually my next question was, how do you think you could get some experience sort of in that? But you're ahead of the game. No, that's good. That's brilliant, because this has just been such a wonderful little pod episode. I've really enjoyed this.
I know, me too.
But yeah,
I want to do a Katherine part 2.
I'm sure we probably could if the time suits and Catherine's free. She's a busy woman.
Absolutely.
But no, this has actually been really lovely. I think it's been a lovely, like I said earlier, given me a real warm feeling, this particular episode, and we've really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences and your journey and letting other people hear that, because I mean, clearly we needed to hear. And
it is.
Hear that as well.
I think it's so easy when you're a performer to get just caught up in your own head with everything going on, and I think this chat, even for us who are not really actively performing anymore, are like, yeah, do you know what, that helps. That really, it just puts some perspective on things and opens up a world of things you don't really think about. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think my biggest advice, kind of to wrap it all up, is just what you want in your career, and that you're in charge of your career. So make sure that you stand up for what is right. Ask the questions if you don't understand. You've been invited into that room and you've got that 10 minutes. Absolutely show them what you can do, and I think that's really important. And know that we are always on your side. We're never sitting there thinking, haha, we can't wait for you to fail. I'm like, be good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is that we cannot do our job without the performers, and I think that is something that you really have to remember in those tricky times.
I love that.
Absolutely. Oh, this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, let's wrap it up.
Yes,
you got any more questions?
Having me.
No,
thank you
so much
so
for
much.
coming.
So much. This has been so wonderful.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for listening, whoever has been listening. Loads of people.
Yeah.
Obviously, as always. But yeah, we'll have a podcast out again next week. Stay tuned. This is going to be nearly Christmas time.
Nearly Christmas.
We have all our podcasts written out in like a schedule. Not stuck to it really already.
No, but this is right before Christmas.
Right before Christmas. So. What a lovely little early Christmas
Merry
present.
Christmas, everyone.
No, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
You have been listening to Tina Chat with Quartz Academy.
If you have any questions or things you want to know, visit our website at www.quartzacademy.co.uk or email us info@quartzacademy.co.uk.
You can also find us on our socials, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok.
Thanks for listening.
We're so happy you're here. See you next week.
Bye.